Hello, I'm Scott Simpson.
And I'm Sharla Steever.
And welcome to another episode of Human-Shaped Learning. Sharla, where are we?
We are in a beautiful place.
I would say so.
We're at Placerville Camp, and it's a very special place to me. Actually, my husband's the director here. He's been the director for starting his 24th year now, and so we lived here, raised our kids here. It's just a really special place.
A lot of good memories, too. I mean, a lot of work that we've done with a lot of teachers and educators over the last how many years? 8, 9 years.
All our retreats.
All our retreats for the Wool Lakota Project. A lot of teachers.
Right around this fire.
Right around this fire. And shenanigans galore.
Definitely shenanigans.
You that remember them, you're out there. We're talking about you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
I seem to remember a little couch fire.
Oh, yes, a burning of a couch.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And just lots of things.
Yeah.
So someday we'll do an episode on some of that, if we figure out how to make it fit. This is my episode, Sharla.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I don't really know what he's talking about.
She never knows what I'm talking about.
I don't.
You know, most of the time, I don't really know what I'm talking about either. So it makes it all fair.
And fun.
And fun. We're the theme, though, for this one, we're back around to uniqueness, which is one of my favorites. Yes. So we're going to talk about uniqueness. The other important thing about this episode is, and maybe I'm going to edit in some sounds right now. It's our Christmas episode.
Oh, ching, 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 ching.
Yeah, some jingle bells, excitement. And so I wore my my green vest.
And I wore purple, but we didn't either talk about it.
That's okay. It's good that you didn't wear green,
yes,
because our greens probably wouldn't have matched. Mm-hmm. So, but that's okay.
But we do look kind of Christmassy.
We look nice and Christmassy, and with the fire behind us. And I know it's going to be a strange Christmas for some folks this year. You know, we're not going to get to be as close to some folks that we might normally be in the room with or hugging on and stuff like that. But it's going to be a wonderful Christmas. I just find the people that you love and make sure they know you love them. I think that's the
kind of
deal.
How Thanksgiving was.
It is.
It's hard. It was different.
Yeah, that's right. I'm guessing, though, maybe a few turkeys were spared.
Maybe so.
The turkeys may have liked the fact that it was a little less festive I don't know. So anyway. Okay, well, here's what we're going to do. As normal, we start out with a third thing, which, as you know, we've talked about this before. Mm-hmm. It's really kind of a more aesthetic way of entering into a conversation. We engage sometimes with a poem, sometimes with, I think in the last episode, there was a song involved, some music, and sometimes an image or a piece of art. And so we're really going to look at some art this time. And it really, I selected it because in part, and we're not engaging, we're just looking at photographs of what this guy does. He's one of my favorite artists of all times, Andy Goldsworthy. And there are a couple of wonderful documentary films about his work. But he works with in nature, but is very clear about nature not being something other than us. I mean, we're from this planet, and so what we do and what nature is doing and what we do with nature together is kind of a holistic thing for him. And so, but he spends if you watch any of the documentary films, he spends a great deal of time working on projects that are very short-lived. They're gone quickly. Okay. Whether it's the wind or the heat, the sun, or just the moving on of the season. Many of his projects are here very briefly and then gone, and some are more lasting. But that's a different kind of art, and but part of what he talks about is collaborating with nature, but also collaborating with time, collaborating with the sun, collaborating with the movement of water. So I think some of this will make sense as we look at some of the images of his work. And so what we're going to do, and we'll put these up on the screen for you, and we're just going to scroll through a few of these. These are all, he doesn't only work in winter. But these, what I've selected came from a blog that's actually a magazine. It's a French magazine. And I will say this. I do not pronounce French words well. And I'm not even going to pretend like I do. And I don't know French. Maybe you do. Parlez-vous
Oui,
français? Oui, oui. So anyway, I'm sorry. I apologize right up front that I will just slaughter some words that needed better pronunciation. But this French magazine is I believe AesthesiaMag. Okay, something like that. And so we'll make sure that you've got the link to that. But these pictures are all from wintertime, from his work that he does with ice and snow and that sort of thing. And you'll see how these are not things that last very long. They're very, very brief and temporary, but a lot of work that goes into them. Usually just him by himself. Sometimes he occasionally, I've seen him have his daughter work with him some. And
Seems like that's the best art. Anything that's fleeting,
yeah,
you happen to capture something.
absolutely. It's something that is there for a moment and then gone. And that's how so many things that are so significant are. Mm-hmm. We want things to last forever. Yeah. But I think that's also one of the reasons I've selected him for this uniqueness episode. Mm-hmm. It is very unique to be an artist and to put a lot of time, energy, and work, and even money into doing something that is gone immediately or almost immediately. That's not something most artists want to do. It's hard to sell that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's something to chew on. So let's look at some of these images, which will be our third thing. So first off, this one is the first that they have on the magazine there on the blog page. Remarkable. He does a lot of work with spheres, but this one are sheets of ice. I believe probably collected off of maybe a pond or something, and then
It almost looks microscopic.
It does. It does. I don't know because we don't have a sense of the perspective on the size on this. But think about the challenge of the slipperiness of ice and getting it to
I don't think you
hold
could
together like
use
that.
a hot glue gun on that.
No. And that's one of the things that is amazing that he does, because he uses what is available there to make things stick and stay. So we'll move on to this one.
Oh, wow.
An arch.
Beautiful.
Yeah. But I think about, and we don't get to see, it's one of the nice things about the videos is you get to watch his process, and you'll get to see him fail like a million times before he finally gets it to work out. And then once it works out, you got to capture that,
I love how the light is in this image as well.
Yeah.
I have no idea where he's at, but it seems like a fairly dark space.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's some light coming through that middle of it.
And that's the nice thing about ice and water is that it transfers light so well. So here's another arch. And I believe that's a combination of snow and stone, flat stones.
Wow. It's like an Oreo lover's dream.
It is. It is like what were those double stuffed ones? Or did they ever do triple stuffed?
I think
like a
he just
super triple, quadruple, quintuple stuffed Oreo. Amazing. So here's one.
Wow.
That's got a really different look to it. And think about the quickness that this has to be done, because those icicles, all to be formed, they had to be hanging down, and then collecting them and getting them together, and then it looks like it's supported just by standing on that rock underneath.
That's really interesting. I have no idea how you would get those joined together, because you would think the ends would be so thick, because
Yeah.
it's the end that dripped is what's sticking out from that center.
Right.
And so how do you get all of that to join?
And some of it must be he's got to pick the day when the temperature is going to be just right, because
So
it
many
seems like the
things have
temperature
to
would have
be.
to be very low and remain very low, and then him be able to maybe heat up the ends a bit to get them to then refreeze. So take a look at this one.
That's cool.
Blocks cut out of packed snow to make these. They're arches, but they're ovals. They're complete circles.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That would be fun. I mean, what a playground that would be.
Yeah.
To be able to have big
Yeah.
chunks of snow like that to build with. I
Right.
would love that.
Any kid would love that.
Oh, yeah.
So check this out. So that to me, and you see, what's interesting there is you don't see. I'm guessing that where he got his snow must be behind the camera, okay? Because you don't see, most of the snow is melted out there in the field, but it
I wonder what he titled that. Does he title his work?
I think some of them he does. Some of them are so short-lived. I'm not sure they stay long enough to get a title. So look at that.
Wow. It looks almost cartoonish.
Yeah, yeah. And they're it looks like blocks of snow, but their geometric shape then is outlined with sticks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just having the creativity to come up with that, to look at the snow and your surroundings and see a piece of art in it all. That's
Yeah.
kind of cool. I
It
mean,
is.
what a unique, we're talking about uniqueness, but what a unique gift
I know.
to be able to see that.
Well, and it seems to me like maybe it's something that he maybe he sees these possibilities all the time, but then his art is to work to make it so that we get to see it as well.
Right.
So this one I'm thinking must be like a frozen pond or something, but he's gotten geometric segments of ice that he has then placed out on the smooth frozen part. And then the other interesting thing to me in this is the collaboration with the snow, because
Right.
the snow has now dusted it.
And how would you ever plan for that?
Right.
He might have had to wait a really long time for that to happen. Or maybe it happened while he was creating it.
Or maybe he wasn't planning for the snow, because maybe he was just planning for it to be clean, and then he got a couple of pictures, and then the snow came.
Yeah.
And it would seem like you could take photos at different points as the snow was coming down. This is one that they really highlighted. This is like a Snowball Fight lover's dream. Like you got all your snowballs ready to
Right.
go. Who's going to beat you on this
Right.
one, Pretty cool.
Yeah.
This is amazing, because I've seen in one of the videos, one of the documentaries, him creating these ice sculptures. It's got to be really cold, and he warms segments up and then puts them together, and then they freeze together. And it's self-supporting.
Wow.
Yeah. It's incredible.
It really is.
And this will be the last one we'll take a look at.
Boy, it looks really hairy.
Yeah, yeah. Once again, I guess reeds or twigs or something. But then he's got this huge block, but then a very thin portion there in the middle.
It's beautiful. Although I would title that My Eyebrows During Pandemic.
Awesome. Awesome. So that's some of the winter art from Andy Goldsworthy. So some of the things that it really, just to respond as a third thing, it really strikes me, one, the thing that I said just a little bit ago, that I feel like these are things that he maybe is noticing the possibility of, noticing the potential of, and then his work is to put that in a form that the rest of us can see it. And yet, at the same time, it's a work he holds loosely because, like with the snow that came later, he knows that some element, and it's not a problem. It's not like, okay, the sun's going to come out and really mess this up. It's like the sun's going to come out and do something to it.
Yes, and what will it be?
That I didn't even plan. And to be able to do that. And so that seems to be almost the epitome of that. I have this unique perspective, and I'm not only not going to hide it, I'm going to make my life's work about making sure you see it.
And what a gift. You think about how much time he spends on each one of these. He'd have to.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would create it without a ton of time. And then we get
and a ton of failure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And then we get to sit and just scroll and
Right.
enjoy, know,
Right.
and we get to enjoy the gifts he brings to the world. That's
Well, and even other artists, I know that in like the filmmakers who have put together displays of his work, and musicians who have put music behind the visuals of these works, the photographer who is doing a different kind of art than what Andy is doing, and yet the photography is such an incredibly important part of his photography.
right.
So what do you think? How do you think, as a teacher, how do we make sure that we're not, that the system, maybe not me, but the system isn't bowling over a child who has the potential for something that maybe is, and not everybody appreciates this. Not everybody appreciates what Andy Goldsworthy does. Okay. But many people really do. And he's made an unbelievable living being able to do this sort of thing. How do we make sure that the system doesn't just...
Where there's nothing quite like a fire inside.
I really think a big part of that is
On a cold winter's night.
So when a child brings
And there's nothing quite like a place to hide. When it's cold outside. When it's cold outside.
Finding out why they enjoy doing that.
And there's nothing quite like a family who cares.
I think that's
Always there by your side.
things that are.
And there's nothing quite like a warm holiday to make the world seem alright. When it's cold outside.
And so
Give me wood smoke and the warmth of a heart, and I'll never grow cold. Give me children with holiday eyes,
perspectives coming from
And a
here.
song for the
So
night.
we bring in these students, and
Yeah,
it's
there's
outrageous,
nothing quite like a family whose
deepening,
love
massive death,
keeps a
and they're wanting to
flame
be
alive
and they're just chances.
when it's cold outside.
Whatever it is they want.
When it's cold
How realistic.
outside.
And as a teacher, as their mentor, how realistic do I need to be? How just straight up encouraging do I need to be? Because in that sense, there's also an economic impact
Oh, yeah.
for me encouraging them. And I don't know the answer to that. It's a hard question.
You know, I don't know that it's always about your role in encouraging. I think it's about noticing.
Yeah.
So if you notice a student has a gift, acknowledging it and letting them see, I see this in you, is definitely your role, and I would say even your responsibility
Yeah.
as an educator to acknowledge that. At that point, I think the student then has to take ownership of it and
Right.
figure out what that means for them. Does this mean this is a life career choice? Is this a hobby or something I really enjoy
Yeah.
and just want to, do for nothing more than because I enjoy it?
And how much tenacity do they have?
Yeah.
Okay, because, I think about if you had Andy Goldsworthy in your class at any age, and you got this guy who spends hours and hours arranging twigs, okay? and that's what he wants to do. You're going to say, you can't do that. That's not a job. You're not going to make it. You're not making something anybody's going to buy. But that's absolutely not what happened. And I think some of it was his unique perspective. Some of it was his absolute tenacity that he was going to continue doing this.
So at the root of that, I think, is joy. I don't think someone continues to do all of that. I don't think someone continues to play with twigs or spend all that time in the cold, in this case, unless there's something about what they're doing that gives them joy.
Joy, yeah. A great thing to bring up in the Christmas episode.
I know. It wasn't even on purpose.
That was great. That was awesome.
Oh, thanks.
Well, here's what we're going to do. At the risk of stretching this too far, we're going to take a look at the article portion, which
Okay.
is normally like a bit of research. It's not. I'm just going to tell you. We're going to look just a little more at another bit of Andy Goldsworthy work, just because I suddenly just decided that I was going to be, I guess really fixated on Andy Goldsworthy. But he has, and this really does follow with what we were just talking about, because he has been commissioned to do massive, amazing, remarkable, and impactful works of art around the globe. And I don't know how much he gets paid for that, but a whole lot. He has made his living doing this.
Wow.
And part of it is the fact that he is creating something to be experienced within and as a part of not only nature, but also culture, which is a part, as Andy Goldsworthy would say, is a part of nature. Our culture is something naturally occurring among us on this planet. And so, so we're going to look at, and this, we'll give you the address for this site. And you can visit this site for real if you want to head over to France. It's amazing, Art Refuges. And it's a huge, it's a hike that you can take. And I'm going to click right here on the map. And so this is like, take a multi-week trip, bring your hiking boots, and be ready to visit these historic places. But the whole trail, which is, I think, 56 kilometers or something like that, the whole trail has these interpretive places where he has done a work with the natural environment, utilizing what is there that is a collaboration not only with the environment, but also with the historic buildings, the historic places that are already there in existence. So it's a little bit like experiencing history and nature, but through the lens of an artist who has also given you something new. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to look at all of these, but we'll look at a couple of them. This first one, once again, not a great pronouncer. I'm not even good at English either. Not good at pronouncing the French, okay? Chapelle Saint Madeleine, I think. Close. Anyway, so we'll just, this is the historic chapel, okay, that was there, stone chapel, okay, built quite some time back. The cavity shall be a space where people will be able to be, a place where others will have been before them, and where others will after. Every visitor will reinforce this human presence. The experience within the cavity will be a stark contrast to the surrounding mountains and open sky. The intensity and intimacy of the cavity at St. Madeleine will be greatened by the hike up and by the view that is left behind on entering the chapel. Okay, so you do this hike to get to this place, and that's part of the experience. You enter this chapel, okay, this stone chapel, okay, and here's a picture of as you approach the chapel. The cavity is this that's been built with the stone inside the chapel.
Wow.
It's a cavity that is a human size. And so the idea is that when you enter that chapel, you step into that cavity, experience it for a little bit, and then step out. And then the person after you steps in and experiences it for a little bit. And what you're experiencing is not only this cavity, this human-shaped cavity that he's created, but also the chapel, also the hike, also, as in this one picture, the fossilized life that hasn't been there for literally millions of years. This recognizing yourself as a living being in this long line of individuals and living beings that have experienced this.
Wow.
As the beginning place, or one of the beginning places for this long experience, this long hike that takes you through a slice of the French countryside. So there are a couple of others that are like that. I'm going to go to this one, which is old Esplenon.
Good try.
So here's Andy's comment about it. When going up to the house along the winding trail, one has the color red in one's eyes and the color red on one's feet because of all the clay, I think. On arriving at the house, one looks at this wall with its red and winding line. I think this will echo the hike fabulously. So this is the work that he did. And if we look at the house, there's the house sitting on the hillside. You hike up to it. And when you get in, then you have this wall within the house that he's shaped. And the cool thing about it, you see all the cracks? Those are not things that, oh no, we got to fix that. We got to fill that crack with something so it won't get any bigger. That's part of it. Mm-hmm. And over time, who knows how long it will take, but over time, that finish will crack more. Those cracks will widen. At some point, maybe crumbles will come down. And all of that will be part of the experience.
Right.
So this uniqueness of doing something that is not only fleeting, but also embracing of all of the other things around it. Not only the natural environment, but also the visitors who come. That it welcomes and invites you to be a participant. that it welcomes and invites the winter, the seasons, the snow, the sun, the rain. I think about that. I think about my own house, okay? And I don't want to get crazy here, but, when you're practical and the weather starts working on your house, you go patch it up. Mm-hmm. You go fix it. You don't want your house looking all weathered. And I understand that to a certain degree. I mean, I want when it's, 20 below, I want that to stay outside and not to come into my bedroom. But to have a place and to live in a place that displays its own history, that displays the weathering that's happened. I don't know. And I wonder about that also, even with our personal selves, our own images. Am I comfortable displaying my age?
That's a hard one. Yeah. I mean, think of how much money is spent and time on covering things.
I know.
People dyeing their hair and, getting the right makeup that covers this thing that I have, or, you know what I mean? I mean, there's a whole industry around that.
I know. So so here's my question. And I want to just say this. There's a whole lot more on that hike that you could take a look at. Lots of beautiful, beautiful pictures. Amazing. If nothing else, I'd like to turn everybody on to checking out Andy Goldsworthy, and the amazing work that he has done and continues to do. He is still working. He lives in Scotland, by the way. He's English, part of the UK. But here's my question. How do we, as teachers, as human beings, how do we help our students feel good about placing themselves exactly where they're at? And by that I mean age-wise, their unique talents, that I do this, but I don't do that thing that other guy does. I mean, so often, middle school, high school, people are feeling bad because they don't do this thing that this other guy does. They don't look the same as this other girl does. How do we help them to gain this perspective on time, on identity, on uniqueness, on self, where they can say, this is what is unique about me, and I am glad. And I'm really, honestly glad. It's not just you're making me feel better by saying I'm really unique. It's literally no one else can be this. No one else can do this. Mm-hmm. How do we do that?
I don't know the answer to that.
I thought you were going to give me the answer. I just
I will say this. I don't know the answer for that for myself.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like you might share something, but I don't do well at it myself.
Well, I don't have that answer either. I wouldn't have asked it.
But I think some of it is, sometimes you have something about yourself, whether it might be a body image thing, it might be a personality thing, it might be something physically, about you, maybe your hair color or your height or your whatever it is. There's a level of being comfortable with yourself as you are. Mm-hmm. And then there's a balance of also being healthy.
Right. Yeah.
And that's, I think, where I struggle a lot in my own life is, being satisfied. You talked about aging. Okay, I'm 50 now. Mm-hmm. Whew. Am I happy with who I am at 50? I want to be. But being 50 doesn't look like 30 or 20 to me. And so I think at that age, too, you start thinking about things like your health. And am I as healthy as I can be?
Right.
To have the best life I can have.
Right.
And so when you step down to the age of like students, there are things about them that maybe would be healthier if they worked on it.
Right.
But there's still a need for a balance of acceptance with that.
Yeah.
And, being here at the camp makes me think
Sure.
of all these kids, especially kids, but adults too, that have come through our doors and they finally find that acceptance here in the community that's built.
Yeah.
And then they try to go back to their homes and schools, and it's really hard. But having a time where you can work on that self-acceptance, self-love, identity, and being okay with your identity, all of that is really, really important to your health, in your psychological health.
Right.
And then noticing the things that need to be worked on, that's great. But it doesn't have to be a failure. You don't, the fact that you might need to lose a little weight, that's something you can work on. But it doesn't have to make you a failure at life or I
Right.
don't know. Sometimes it takes over everything.
Right. I think also it's a matter of who is setting that course, because we're gonna talk in another episode pretty soon, about agency. Am I feeling like I am calling the shots? Like if there's something I need to do or want to do or to help keep me healthier, it's going to be hard for me to get to that point until it really is me calling the shots on that.
This is a funny little sidebar here,
That's okay.
but we watched White Christmas the other day.
Oh yeah.
Such a good show.
Oh yeah.
And
you mean the Bing Crosby?
yeah,
The real.
right.
Yeah.
The
That's awesome.
1950s, I think.
Yeah.
Movie. And I was noticing just, how all the women have that hourglass shape, and they're tiny, and they're, so perfectly formed on there.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, as a young girl, like my mom talking about how growing up, it was really important that you had this 36, 24, 36 figure, and that was what everybody was striving for. And I think about now, that is so far from a lot of our young women's, thoughts. I don't know about men, but I know, like, if I said 36, 24, 36 to my daughter, she'd be like, what are you talking about? And that was like this thing I know all my life I tried to aspire to as a young girl.
I see, and that's one of the hopeful things. I really think, as far as body image sorts of things like that go, I think there's a much broader realm of acceptance and approval and all of that. And that's great. Now I think that can be, traded out. I still think the bottom line is, am I looking to everyone else around me to affirm me, or am I really, moving forward? And I'm not saying that the healthiest thing is to move forward without caring about what anybody else thinks.
Right.
I mean, I think and I don't think that's the message in Andy Goldsworthy's. In fact, I think that one of the messages is to be aware of who has gone before me, who is coming behind me, how are they impacting me, how am I impacting them, and to be aware of those things. But
I think it's also, though, about openness to what we haven't seen yet.
right.
As people are more and more bold with what they wear or
whatever
it is, to open ourselves to things not being as they always have been.
Gender norms, things
Yes.
like that. It's you suddenly, it's almost like, to use a biblical reference, scales falling off your eyes when you realize, oh my goodness, this thing that I have been so judgmental about my entire life, I suddenly realize is a very subjective thing. I've just always felt like, well, if you're one of these, you ought to be just like this. If you're a young man, you ought to be just exactly like. And then you say, well, okay, yeah, there are definitely some certain things that we can say. If you're a good human being, even if you're a good young man, this should be a part of but there's so many of those things that are so subjective and so culturally situated in something that is fleeting. And to turn those then into judgment means we're cutting off the possibility of some really fresh way of being and seeing who we are and the world we live in.
And it brings us back to the whole theme of this episode, which is uniqueness.
Absolutely.
Celebrating that uniqueness, seeing it in others, and not having, getting ourselves to the point where our knee-jerk reaction isn't, judgment.
Right.
But almost another time of sharing this idea of joy.
Absolutely.
But it's a sense of joy to see another person who's completely different from me in some way, and know that they're being their best self too, or trying to. Not
to go light on it, but it's kind of like finding out that suddenly you get left out of all the reindeer games. Just because of that red nose.
I know. Poor Rudolph.
Poor Rudolph. Wow. See, we came right back around to Christmas. Speaking of coming around to Christmas, I know that you have a quote for us here in just a moment. But what I'd like to do is a special gift. I hope you'll see it as a gift. Cheryl and I sometimes, every once in a while, do a Christmas song thing. And so it's kind of like, because we don't like to send out Christmas cards, we do a little Christmas video thing. Mm-hmm. So that sounded really bad. It's not that we don't like to send out Christmas cards. It's just that we kind of do it musically instead. So I'm gonna share with you our Christmas song for this year. It's a song that we wrote a long time ago. We actually wrote it together, and years ago. But this is a brand new arrangement, and the video is much like Andy, who I admire deeply, a collaboration with the beautiful snow falling in Spearfish Canyon where we live. So we'll show that to you now. This is When It's Cold Outside.
Where there's nothing quite like a fire inside on a cold winter night. And there's nothing quite like a place to hide when it's cold outside. When it's cold outside. And there's nothing quite like a family who cares, always there by your side. And there's nothing quite like a warm holiday to make the world seem alright when it's cold outside. Give me wood smoke and the warmth of a heart, and I'll never grow cold. Give me children with holiday eyes, and I'll never grow old. Where there's nothing quite like a fire inside, and a song for the night. And there's nothing quite like a family whose love keeps the flame alive when it's cold outside. When it's cold outside.
Beautiful.
Thank you. So yeah, it's not. We got a fire inside right now.
We do.
It's pretty nice. So yeah. So there. We really hope that your Christmas, your holiday season, is really a good one. I know it may look different this year, but it's been a tough year. So there's some goodness in moving on into 2021. I think getting that fresh start. Mm-hmm. So uniqueness. Did you find a uniqueness quote for us to wrap the episode up with?
I did.
Awesome.
And I think it actually, we don't really plan those ahead of time. We try to just...
We purposefully, we try to create a situation where who knows what's going to happen.
But I think this blends very nicely with everything we've been talking about. My quote today actually comes from Emma Stone.
Ah.
I love Emma Stone. Mm-hmm. I love her movies. And it goes like this. What sets you apart can sometimes feel like a burden, and it's not. And a lot of the time, it's what makes you great.
Oh, I love that.
I do too.
I love that. And it's really honest, that yeah, what sets you apart can feel like a burden. It really can, but it's also the thing that makes you great that nobody else has.
Right. Yeah. Right. I always tell young people, if you don't be exactly who you are, the world misses out.
Yeah.
Because no one else can do it.
That's right. Well, I'll tell you what, hope you have a wonderful holiday season and stay unique and love the uniqueness in those around you.
And Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas. Be well.